My story begins on the night of the 16th, 17th of September 1942, when, as the rear gunner of a Wellington BJ877 of 150 Squadron, stationed at Snaith near Doncaster in Yorkshire, we took off with the target of Essen. Approaching the target, the aircraft was hit by heavy anti-aircraft fire and the port engine put out of action. This meant that none of the hydraulics worked and therefore the turret was dead. So, being so near to the target, we pressed on, dropped the bomb, a 4,000-pound cookie impact bomb, designed to explode the moment it hit the ground, dropped that and then set out to get home as quickly as we could. Over Belgium, the starboard engine packed up at 13,000 feet and we had to bail out. And it was a Thursday night, and I was coming down on a parachute and not feeling very happy because on the Friday we had been due to go on leave, and I saw my leave disappearing at that moment and I was not best pleased. And then the ground came up and hit me and I lay gasping in the middle of a ploughed Belgian field. I gathered myself in a parachute and set out on something that we had worked out beforehand, what to do when you were shot down. Not if, but when. This was our 22nd operation, and most of the crews on the squadron only got as far as 14, so we were quite lucky in that respect. And I set out southwesterly, heading for Gibraltar, hoping to make my way there stage by stage. I walked through the night and towards the morning came on the outskirts of a village, Kapellen by Glabbeeck, and walking round the outside of the village I looked at one farmhouse, and to me that seemed a likely place, so I went and knocked on the door, hoping that the person who answered it would be an elderly lady and I could run away faster than she could chase me if she wasn't sympathetic. Instead, the door was opened by a burly young man, and he spoke what I later discovered was Flemish. Now, I had gone to a technical school, I'd taken German at school, and Flemish to me sounded rather like German, and so I answered in my best schoolboy German. The door was slammed in my face, and I thought, good, they don't like the sound of that. Banged again, and eventually succeeded in getting into the kitchen of the house where the family gathered. There was grandfather, grandmother, who really ran the whole family, her daughter, their daughter, and she carried a baby in her arms, and the young man who'd opened the door was her husband. Whilst we are standing there trying to communicate that I was an airman escaping and wanting to seek shelter before proceeding on my way, there was a knock at the door and there was a woman standing there. This was about 5 o'clock in the morning. She had seen me creeping around the outskirts of the village and had come ostensibly to buy meat because the family happened to be also the village butchers. I'm told that later she was visited by the local resistance and told not to say anything of what she had seen, and she kept quiet. I was looked after by that family for a week, and then asked if I could ride a bicycle, which I could, and then we cycled off one day to Tienen or Tillemont, to the next stop, which was at the house of a Belgian stockbroker, Manny and his Marcel and his wife Manny, and they gave me a suit of Marcel's wardrobe, which was miles too big for me. I could look down the trouser leg quite easily, but that was the suit I had, and the one in which I returned back to this country some 5.5 weeks later. I went from their house to Brussels, and I was followed to make sure that I was not a German infiltrator trying to break into an escape line. And when I came to Brussels, I was put into the house of Achille Earlieu out at Laken, which is near to the Royal Palace. And whilst there, I was taken into Brussels to the flat of two sisters who were working for the resistance. One of them came in ostensibly from a shopping trip, and her handbag fell open on the kitchen table, and out came a passport-sized photograph of Mounts, who was flying with us that night on his first operation. He was an American citizen who had joined the Canadian Air Force before America came into the shooting war. And when I said that I recognised this chappie, the look of joy on the faces of the two sisters that our stories did link up and vouched that we were both genuine escapers and not German infiltrators. And I stayed with Achille, who, as a safe housekeeper, would not normally have acted as a courier, but for some reason he did act as a courier in taking me from Brussels to Paris. At the frontier between Belgium and France, the train was stopped. We were ordered off the train whilst our baggage and passports and all that kind of thing, identity cards, were examined. I was by now a Belgian seaman, Robert Simonis. I lived in Brussels, and I'd been home on leave from Bordeaux to visit my poor mother, who lived at 19 Sluizenstraat. Sluizenstraat existed, but number 19 did not. The people who worked out this story made sure that nobody was going to be inconvenienced by a visit from the opposition. But it would at least take the Germans some time to work out that, and it would give members of the resistance line chance to make their escape. And I was asked to try and keep quiet if I could for a day to give them chance to go. In the event, I was taken from Paris, from Brussels through to Paris, as I say, by Achille, and then in Paris I was lodged with a French couple, Robert and Germaine Eiley, who lived near to the tomb of Napoleon, and we were up on the 4th floor of their block of flats, and they took me about in Paris. We walked along the Champs-Élysées. Robert explained to me that the Germans did used to hold a military parade along that thoroughfare until a Free French Air Force pilot came along and machine gunned them and put a stop to that practice, much to the delight of the Parisians. Anything they could do to get back at the enemy, they did. And the great question always asked was, when is the liberation coming? This was 1942. They had a while to wait. Robert and Germaine had made 2 small flags ready to hang out, one the French tricolour and the other their version of the Union flag. And they were ready to do that way back in September, October 1942. Going from Paris down to Jean De Luz in the southwest corner of France, I was taken with 5 other people. 3 of us from the same crew, Tillemont I've mentioned, and Bill Randall, our pilot. And there was also a Polish airman, Teddy Frankowski, and he wanted to get back to England very quickly. We thought it was because he wished to continue the war. It wasn't really that. He had a motorbike back at his camp and wanted to get home before it had been sold. So that was his reason for wanting to get home quickly. And the 6th member was the only commissioned person with us, Pipkin, who was a very strange character, and later, I understand, did commit suicide. The girl who had taken us down from Paris to Saint-Jean was Jeanne de Luz. She was 17 years of age, and she did that journey down 20 times, and the return journey back 20 times. And in my opinion, she should have been awarded a real medal. Unfortunately, she wasn't awarded that honour, but did survive the war. On arrival at Jean De Luz, I was taken to a farmhouse on the outskirts of the Pyrenees, and there I met Dédé de Jong, who started the Comet Line going, and Florentino Goycochea, a Basque smuggler, a real genuine life-size smuggler, and he smuggled we 6 over the Pyrenees. On the way over, I fell into a pit. I was at the back of the group of 6, and coming behind me was Dédé de Jong. She called Florentino back, and he came along and lifted me out of that pit like a drowned rat and dumped me on the side of the ground, and we proceeded to cross the Pyrenees, stopping occasionally at a bush from which Florentino produced a bottle of cognac, which was passed around, and very warming it was to the 6 of us. We couldn't cross the river Bidassoa because it was in flood, and so we had to walk on for another 5 hours until we came to a crossing point by a bridge to get over onto the Spanish side. And there, up by the bridge, was a hut, and there was a Spanish guard civil on duty smoking his cigarette. And I'm laying on the ground on a very steep slope thinking to myself, oh, for goodness sake, hurry up and go and finish your cigarette and let me get across this bridge, which eventually he did, and I bolted across there to the other side, joined the others, and we were taken in a nice CD motor car to San Sebastián, where Dédé de Jong went and saw the British consulate there and had words with them before she went back into occupied Europe. Florentino went back to his home near to Jean De Luz, and we were taken eventually down to Madrid, to the old British embassy there, and the barracks that had been part of the Victorian building was used as a dormitory for a raggle-taggle bunch of us, all all dressed in whatever clothing we'd been able to gather, and the ambassador there put on a silver candle-lit dinner, and it boosted our morale enormously. Whilst I was there, I was able to return the shoes I had been given by the people back in Belgium as an indication that their airmen had safely got across to the other side. That was one way of communicating the good news to them. On approaching the Rock of Gibraltar, the gates were opened, paperwork exchanged, and we were in to the rock itself. And a most peculiar feeling came over me. I felt trapped. I was locked in. I was back under the command of the service again. I didn't enjoy the freedom I felt I'd had whilst on the run through France and Belgium and so on. But there it was. We were debriefed, spent about a week there. Water was the great shortage. The rock was absolutely crammed to the brim with people, and drinking water was in short supply. And so we were issued with soap that was more like pumice stone than soap. It would float in sea water, so you could go and have a wash in the sea if you wanted to. But eventually we were called together, put into an aircraft of the United States Army Air Corps, a Dakota, and flown back to England by going out across the Bay of Biscay on a flight that would normally be a couple of hours but took 8 hours to avoid the coast, and we landed at Portreath, England, 5 weeks and 4 days after I had taken off to go bombing Essen, and I was back home again.